Well, you saw that video about Katie and Huntington's disease. With Huntington's disease, the symptoms that show up involve those tremors, involve the inability to walk, as they said, with an even gait, so they stumble. Eventually, they are unable to feed themselves. They need great assistance. And it's a slow, steady slide, usually from the age 45 on. And for Katie, she saw her uncle and her grandfather go through Huntington's disease. And as they said in the video, if one person has it, their child has a 50% chance of getting this disorder, which means that it is a dominant gene disorder. You either get it or you don't. And if you were to look at your DNA, everybody has a gene called the Huntington gene, called Huntington because they knew there was a genetic reason for this disease and they went looking for the gene that causes it. The gene has a normal function, but they just named it after the disease. So everybody has the Huntington gene. It's just, does it have the normal sequence, the healthiest sequence, or a sequence that leads to Huntington's disease? And if we look at your Huntington gene, somewhere in there we're going to find a DNA sequence that is CAG, 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 and it keeps repeating itself. In this case, I'm only showing 4 repeats, but typically there are more than that. And if we count up how many CAG repeats that you have in this Huntington gene and find less than 30, then you will not get Huntington's disease at all. That's a guarantee. On the other hand, if you have more than 30 repeats, you are guaranteed to get Huntington's. And remember, the symptoms typically show up in the mid-40s. And if you have even more than 30 repeats, if you have more than 40, then not only are you guaranteed to get Huntington's, but the symptoms will develop in the mid-30s. Katie was more in that category based on the number of repeats that she had. And with this video being made in 2007, then she's at that point where symptoms are probably already showing up. Now, Katie really wanted to know, so she decided to get tested. She wanted to become super balanced and super strong and really kind of take care of herself so that when the symptoms showed up that maybe they wouldn't be as severe, at least initially, or that maybe they'd be delayed a little bit. But there are no treatments for Huntington's disease. There are no cures. And so if you get it, everybody knows what they're in store for. In fact, so much so because they are coming from a family where they've seen this over and over and over again. You can't escape it. From any family reunion, any gathering that you have, any conversation that you have with other family members, invariably it circles back to, well, how's so-and-so doing? And how about them? And has anybody else in our family found out that they have this? Did anybody find out that they don't have it? If you come from a family with Huntington's, you know what you're in for because you've seen it over and over and over again. In fact, the researcher mentioned that for many patients who are diagnosed with Huntington's disease, that suicide is not a matter of if, but a matter of when. As unfortunate as that might be, it's somewhat understandable given that they know what they're in for. Well, Katie wanted to know. Katie wants to know whether or not she's going to get Huntington's disease, not just to become super strong or anything, but she's not going to be retiring when she's 65, right? I mean, she's not going to get this bed and breakfast going that she wants to get going. She's not going to wait until she retires to begin that side of her career, side of her life. She's not going to be there. And so, she wants to be in a position where she can start planning for the future. And if she had found out otherwise, if she had found out that she didn't have it, then great, at least she knows. But now she knows how to plan. She had talked also about not having kids and not passing it on. She wants to kind of take the bull by the horns on this one. As her great aunt Helen says, she has a lot of moxie. Well, for Katie, not wanting to know is one thing, but not everybody in that family wants to know. If you don't want to know, maybe it's because you just don't want to be confronted with the inevitable. Maybe it's because you'll deal with it when it happens. Maybe that pressure of opening up that envelope with the results or sitting down with that genetics counselor and finding out the results together is just too much. Look, I'll find out when I find out. If it happens, I'll deal with it. But at the moment, this just isn't anything that I want to wrestle with. the problem with genetic disorders, or one of the problems, one of the concerns that genetic counselors present or know about when they recommend patients to get tested, is that you're finding out information not just about yourself, but also about your parents, right? I mean, for Katie, and I can't remember which side of the family it is, whether it's her mom's side or her dad's side, somewhere in there, if Katie finds out that she has this genetic disorder, then it's guaranteed that mom or dad has it as well. And so let's pretend that Katie gets tested and finds out that she has it, and she comes in the door that day and says, gosh, I just got the results back. I'm going to have Huntington's disease, but at least I know. Well, now her parents, one of them, also knows, and maybe they didn't want to get tested. Maybe they didn't want to know. Knowing something about yourself with your genetics, in many cases, tells you about others. And for the parents, not only maybe they didn't want to find out, but oftentimes with genetic disorders, the parents feel an overwhelming sense of guilt. This isn't a contagious disorder. This isn't something they could have prevented by, making sure that the child eats healthy. This is something that they gave to them at birth. This is part of their inheritance, in a sense. And a lot of parents just feel really terrible about that. We never did meet Katie's parents, and in subsequent videos that I've seen with her, she talks about how she's kind of been ostracized by the family. I mean, what conversations are you going to have that don't keep circling back to Huntington's disease and the fact that Katie knows that she's got it? She also talks about dating. I mean, what date do you bring up the idea or the concept that you are going to have Huntington's disease? Is that a first date sort of thing? Hi, my name's Katie and I'm going to have Huntington's disease. Is that second date, third date? I mean, somewhere in there it's irresponsible not to bring it up. It is part of your future. And so she kind of struggles with that. Well, what I want you to do with the response is I want you to put yourself in Katie's position. If you were in a family where Huntington's was a possibility, would you want to get tested? Why or why not? Spend some time with that, write a response, do a free write for a couple of minutes if you would please, and then hold on to that response because there's more responses that we're going to do as part of that packet.